And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show, the NBA Process Show, a little bit of both. That is what we have here today, Monday, March 4th. We're brought to you by BetMGM. I'm Josh Engleman. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live, and follow me on Twitter. It's pretty simple, at Josh Engleman. Good to see everybody here. Coming off the weekend, I know this is going to look a little bit different than it normally does, but I'm hoping I can bring you guys the same goods on this show. We're going to take a look through all 6 games on the DraftKings main slate. It's only 4 games on FanDuel tonight, but we will mention them when it is appropriate. We're going to work through everything. We might pop over to Odd Shopper, see if there's any interesting bets lurking for some of these games. We're going to take a look at the Sims tool and see what's getting spit out there in comparison to what I've already gotten running my Sims. Lots to look at over the next hour, and I'm excited to get into it now. To those of you that are watching that are normally here for the process show, congratulations on being able to grab at least a little bit of extra sleep if you wanted to. Normally, we're up at 6:30 a.m. doing this exact same thing. Now, we're kicking it down the road a little bit, starting it off at 10 o'clock. And you're going to get me like this every single day. Like I said, 6 games on the docket. Some ugly ones. Memphis, Brooklyn, not exactly something I want to watch. Portland, Minnesota, not exactly something I want to watch. I mean, I think we're all just like, okay, we're going to watch Clippers and Bucks at 8 o'clock. And then we're going to watch Oklahoma City and the Lakers tonight at 10:30. But the rest of it, you can kind of leave it. It's not going to be the most fun situation in the world. So here's where we stand. I'm letting my phone hop over here onto the charger. Let's get that all charged up for the day. I'm ready to talk some shop here. Make sure you're hitting that like button. That's going to be the most helpful thing that we do to start off the day. I'm also going to just dive in right out of the gate and show you guys what the Sim tool, 1, looks like, and 2, we're going to see where it has us to start off 10 a.m. Monday, March 4th. So thank you guys for being here. Stephen Leibowitz, I'll hit you with that first question. Let's pop it up on the screen. Nope, that's not the right one. Let's go that way. Did I watch Sting? I did not. I did not buy the AEW pay-per-view last night. So I did not catch the final match in the illustrious career of Sting. From everything that I read, nothing but awesome. So I do wish that I would have checked it out, but I would have never been able to be up late enough to watch this one. So we're going to go ahead and just say I didn't see it, but I'll catch that later today, I would imagine. What we want to catch right now, though, is the easy piece. We're going to hop on over to our Sims tool, and the first step I'm going to take is I'm going to generate my field. So I'm getting a 5,000 lineup pool. We've got the $4 100,000 entry, 100K to first contest going on DK tonight. I'm going to just go right out of the gate. I'm going to generate lineups. Now, I'm not going to touch anything. I've already run the Sims using my projections, and I have my data loaded into my workbook. So I'm going to be able to talk about what I've got, and we're also going to have it up on the screen using our Sims tool. We're going to see what the Sims are doing to start the day. We'll get an idea of where I'm at in relationship to the Sims, things we think might change moving forward, things I might have to change the other direction if things don't look great to me. So right here, it's already on the screen. I have generated a 5,000 lineup pool, pretty well matching up to ownership and pool exposures. Now, I'm not going to do any boosts in the morning to manipulate my player pool in any way. It's too early for that. That's a later in the day mechanism if you need it. So I'm going to use the pool that we just generated with 52% lineups of Kyle Kuzma. And I'm just going to simply go to simulate lineups. It's on the bottom of the screen. Trust me, that button's there. It's not cropped into this little view, but we're going to move that through. I'm going to select 30% to first. It's technically like 28% and change, but I'm going to go with 30% to first. I am going to reset the projections because that does have my personal projections in it. What I want to run now is the projections that are up on Stochastic at this moment. If you have our premium tools, you can go to Stochastic and do the exact same thing and see the exact same numbers that I'm getting, except for the simulation results. So I'm going to run those sims. And I think we're going to get it started right away for game number 1. That would be the Memphis Grizzlies, 8.5-point dogs in Brooklyn, 210 total. Now, this is as gross as it normally is for Memphis. We have the Grizzlies sitting here with a just barely over 100 implied total. Not great. That's the first problem. Second problem, they're missing even more people than they normally are. So Jaren Jackson is once again doubtful. Derrick Rose is out. And now Zaire Williams is also out for this matchup. They're just constantly missing people. We have Ben Simmons with the Q tag on the opposite side for the Brooklyn Nets, along with Cam Thomas still being out. So as I look at it for Memphis, they're shorthanded as they've been for what feels like the entire season. I mean, we had like a very regular run where Marcus Smart and Desmond Bane were all around, and now it just feels like a different season. But in this spot, Brooklyn, 19th in defensive rating, 23rd in pace. It's not a great spot for Memphis, and you kind of see that in the ownership right now. GG Jackson is projected to be the highest owned guy from the Grizzlies at 12%. He's also the highest optimal rate at 15%. And then it's single-digit ownership for everybody else. Around 10% optimal for Santi Aldama and Jordan Goodwin. We did get Luke Kennard and John Conchar back last time out, so that helps a little bit. Kennard in particular, who's an actual real NBA player. But we're only getting guys are in and around that 10% optimal rate, but they do have some positive leverage, and I think that'll be interesting as we look at the Sims tool. So right out of the gate, I'm just going to favorite the top 150 lineups in simulated ROI, and that's what we have on the screen. We have what we expect the ROI to be for the lineup, the projected fantasy points, the total ownership. How often does that lineup win the contest? How often is it in the top 10? How often is that lineup going to cash? How many dupes we have? The salary involved, and then the lineup. But what we want to look like, because I'm not going to manipulate this at all, we want to look at the exposures that are up on the screen right now. And the first thing I'm going to do is just simply sort this down and just show you guys Memphis. So we're all talking about the same stuff. And you can see it on the screen. GG Jackson is the guy that showed up the most for anybody on the Grizzlies. He's in 31% of our first sim run, well north of the 12.5 projected ownership. And then it's just single digits for everybody else. 6% of Aldama, 5% of Jordan Goodwin, 5% of Vince Williams, one single share of Luke Kennard. But it does seem like GG Jackson, at least from the Sims perspective, is the guy that we want to pay attention to start for the Grizzlies. Now, he seems to play in and around 26 minutes every night. That is what I gave him for today. And as I look at it, I had 14% of GG Jackson. So I'm a little bit lower in the overall exposure for him, but I do also see him as one of the main plays you want to get to from the Grizzlies. I'm actually getting to a little bit more of one, Santi Aldama, who's 6K, power forward only. We'll likely see a couple minutes at center just because of the way their rotations look. Now, I gave Aldama 30 minutes. We have him in our projections at 28.5. So I think that extra minute and a half for me is what's causing me to get 17% of Santi Aldama. And you can see that here on the screen. I've got 17% of Aldama. I've got 19% of Vince Williams, another guy that we didn't really get a ton of coming out of the Sims tool, but another guy that I see as an interesting GPP play at just 6% ownership. We're talking about a guy that's going to play likely the most minutes of anybody on the team. Vince Williams is projected for 33.5 minutes in our projections. It's about what he's doing every night. Could play more. This is a little bit more likely to be a Memphis Grizzlies win than it normally is. But as I look at it, I see these guys as GPP viable. The total in the game is terrible. But whether it's Vince Williams, Santi Aldama at 6% and 7% ownership respectively, I want to take a chance on these guys in a 100,000 person contest, because if Memphis is in this game, there are only so many dudes that are going to be there for it offensively. There's not a lot of excess usage going around to the Grizz. This is a team that doesn't really have those sorts of creators right now. So I've got my eye on Vince Williams as a GPP pivot. I've got my eye on Santi Aldama as a GPP pivot. And then I have my eye on GG Jackson as someone that I think everybody is just going to universally think, this guy looks solid. I don't really like too much else, and that's backed up by ownership and optimal rates right now. Maybe you can say Jordan Goodwin needs a little bit of a look. He came in 8.5% owned in the Sims tool, just 5% into our actual, like our personal exposure. So there's not a ton you want from Memphis, but they do have a couple plays that either look good in large field or just reasonable, like GG Jackson. The Brooklyn side is going to be pretty similar in terms of how we're not like all that interested in what we can get. You see 11% exposure. That's coming to be in this middle column right here. That's the most we got of anybody. That's going to be Cam Johnson, and he's only 6% owned. No one on the Brooklyn Nets has a projected ownership higher than 7%. We did get Cam Johnson to an optimal rate of 13%. So either we're going to see his ownership come up a little bit, or maybe we see the optimal rate come down. But either direction, Cam Johnson looks like the easiest dude to get to from the Brooklyn Nets. I tend to agree, although for anybody that normally watches me or hears me talk, I tend to get a little bit of Mikal Bridges. That's no different here either. 7,600 for Bridges, shooting guard, small forward eligible. He's been playing at like a 0.95 fantasy point per minute rate. That's probably a little lower than you would expect, certainly in a matchup against Memphis. He's someone that I'm getting 15% of. Another guy, sort of like the Memphis guys, that I'm excited to get to in this larger field contest. But then the other guy that I got, the only other guy in double digits for me, is Cam Johnson. He's in 11% of my lineups. No major stands coming from the Grizzlies or Brooklyn is my main takeaway here. That seems to be the biggest thing. There's not any overwhelming, I got to get this dude in my lineups plays from either Memphis or Brooklyn. And I don't really think that's going to change if Ben Simmons gets ruled in. But you can see the ownership on the top of the screen. Or if we hop back to the Sims tool, you can see the projected ownership in the pool for the guys that did show up for us from Brooklyn. 6% to Cam Johnson, 3% to Day'Ron Sharpe, 6% to Bridges, 7% to Claxton, 3% to DSJ, 4% to Dorian Finney-Smith. There's just not a lot of love coming in to either one of these teams, really. Sims Tool likes GG Jackson. Sims Tool likes Cam Johnson a little bit. This is not going to be the premier game that we have today. It's just not. That's not what we're really getting. It's as ugly as it gets, Memphis and Brooklyn. It's really not that good. Now, I do want to touch on the rest of today for you guys. I think that'd be helpful to let you know just what it is we're doing for our content for today. Because we're starting off the work week. It's Monday, March 4th. What are we doing today, you guys may ask? We've got this show right now, taking you all the way till probably 11. We've got the NHL strategy show at 2 p.m. Don't want to miss that. If you're on the hockey streets, you certainly don't want to miss when we have our NHL shows. I'll be back for the NBA Deeper Dive tonight with Matt Bellman. You'll get NBA Live Before Lock tonight with Greg and Eric. And then you guys have heard us talk about it a lot as of late. I'll be back with Greg for playback, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time tonight. Hopping on playback, watching games together. It's the best experience. We can give out VIP memberships to our playback channel. It's completely free to come join us. But if you don't have League Pass, we can hook some of you up with temporary League Pass so that you can watch games along with us. Our heads are on there just like a normal show. We're chopping it up, talking basketball, but we've got the games playing in the background. We could talk about bets. We could talk about pick'em sites. We could talk about DFS plays, all of that stuff. You guys can check that out with us at Playback. Links in the description of this video if you're interested in checking it out. I just realized I didn't do anything here. Let's take a peek at OddsShopper. You can check out OddsShopper at oddshopper.com. Links below as well. Looks like right out of the gate, number one bet available to anybody right now is Mikal Bridges less than 2.5 threes. I'm so used to saying that from a Prize Picks perspective. Let me take a sip of coffee quick too. A little tickle in the throat. Mikal Bridges under 2.5 made threes. Line is plus 135. We have the true odds at plus 120. You can snag this line right now at Bet365. You can get under 2.5 at plus 135. Maybe you're at a different site and you're not at Bet365. You can get it at plus 130. That's still a positive EV play if you want to get it at BetMGM. They happen to be sponsoring us today. There's some links involved. I'll talk to you guys about them in a bit. But it looks like Mikal Bridges under 2.5 threes is standing out as the best play on OddsShopper right now. Go get it if you can. It's sitting out there for you guys. If we want to look at it from a pick'em perspective, we actually do have a what it looks like a free square to me. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander over 0.5 points. That's going to be on Sleeper. Don't sleep on free squares. Best thing you can do. And then Mikal Bridges under 23.5 points is sitting out there on Underdog right now. That looks like it's the best play that you can find on any of the pick'em sites. I haven't filtered this down at all. What you're looking at is everything. So we might not have a lot to talk about for future games, but Bridges right now, either on the pick'em streets or in the sports betting streets, has the best thing you could look for. So if you can put that bet in, go ahead and grab Mikal Bridges under 2.5 threes. It's a solid line. I think now we can go to game number 2. That's going to be the LA Clippers. They are 5-point dogs in Milwaukee. We have a 228 total. Now, this one's a little tricky. Clippers are on a back-to-back. We don't have any idea what their injury report is going to look like, save for one item. Russell Westbrook broke his hand, and it appears that he's going to be out for a while. I don't know how he's going to be playing through a broken hand. I'm very confident that if his hand is broken, he's not going to be playing today. I'm guessing Bones Highland soaks up a little bit of that playing time. Someone else might step into a couple minutes. Generally speaking, I think we're just going to see a slightly consolidated rotation. But the big takeaway here for the Clippers is that they don't look good at all. 8% ownership coming into Kawhi Leonard on the DraftKings side. That is the highest mark of anybody on the team. Only Zubats gets above 1%. If you look at this from the FanDuel side, remember, only 4 games on FanDuel. They cut the final 2. 21% ownership coming into a $9,600 Kawhi on FanDuel. Much more interesting. But I think the Sims tool tells the story. We're looking at it now. 7% owned Kawhi showed up in 9% of our lineups. He's the only Clipper that showed up in a lineup to start the day. That is very much in line with what we're seeing from the ownership. Kawhi did get to 11% optimal. The next highest optimal rate in our boom bust tool from the Clippers is Ivica Zubats at 4.4%. I thought that the Clippers would look solid here, but I took a lap through all of the rates when Russell Westbrook isn't around, but everybody else is involved. No real changes. Nothing like, it's not like Kawhi was deferring to Russ before. So I only got to 4%. We got to 9% of him in the sim tool. I only have 4. I got 1 share of Zubats. It's quite possible that the Clippers are the most uninteresting team on today's slate. They are currently, as I look at it right now, they have 13% aggregate exposure. That right there is the lowest mark of any team on today's slate. I see it as very difficult to want to prioritize anything from the Clippers. It just doesn't look very good. And it should. We can call Milwaukee somewhere from like the 10th to 15th best defense. they've played better so far. They've had a little bit of shooting luck since Doc has taken over as coach, which I think is overrating their defense a little bit. But they're just like a middle of the pack defense, middle of the pack pace team. We're just not squeezing out enough from the Clippers that I expected. Now, if we think about it from the Milwaukee side, as I changed the sim tool over, little bit different of a story here for the Bucks. We're seeing 10% ownership coming into Pat Bev at 3,300. If that doesn't stand out to you as a reason why we don't have a ton of value yet, it should, because $3,300 Pat Bev as just a simple backup point guard is already pulling 10% ownership. We have like 8 coming into Giannis, single digits across the board in ownership for Milwaukee. We did get to 13% optimal on Giannis, and we do see Giannis show up more than anybody else in our sim. He was in 19% of our lineups. The pool has 9. So we're 2xing Giannis Antetokounmpo to start. He is our preferred option in the sims right now coming from the Bucks. Beasley came in 11%. Pat Bev came into 11%. And then essentially nothing for Lopez and for Portis. I have it similar. You know, I'm a little lighter on Giannis, but I did match the field. I'm right at 11% for Pat Bev, so I'm matching the field. And then I tend to get to Damian Lillard a little bit more frequently than it feels like most people do. And that's happening again here. Not that I have a giant stand on Dame, but he's in 9% of my lineups. He's 6% owned. I like getting a scattered amount of Milwaukee, but this is another situation. We're through 4 teams now. These are not the teams that have your priority plays. You can see that in optimal rates. You can see that in ownership. You can even just see that in sim results. Although I do think seeing 19% exposure to Giannis to start the day looks pretty good. Now, if we think about this one from a betting perspective, do we have anything interesting from this game? We do have Harden showing up with a decent enough line right now on PointsBet. Under 8.5 assists for Harden. Line is currently set at minus 130. You can get about 5% EV by grabbing this line on PointsBet right now. Fanatics looks like it has the same line. Maybe Bet365 has the same line. Slightly worse line at Bet365. It's minus 135 there. Similar story for DraftKings at minus 140. There's a little value that you can squeeze out, but if you're at PointsBet, that's the spot that you're going to want to go to grab what looks like the best option from this Bucks Clippers game on OddsShopper. Again, oddshopper.com. Links in the description. From a pick'em site perspective, doesn't appear we have a ton in this game. Looks like Harden under 5.5 rebounds is sitting at Prize Picks with a little bit of value attached to it. But not a lot here on the pick'em side showing up on OddsShopper just yet. This seems like more of a DFS game than anything else. Speaking of DFS games, we'll get to Utah and Washington in a bit. That is the overwhelming top game on the slate. Daniel Garcia in chat says, I'm locking James over Giannis. Yeah, we're going to get to him in a little bit. For right now, though, we're going to move it on to Portland and Minnesota. This is a legitimately disgusting basketball game for countless reasons. Depends which way you want to look at it. It's horrific for Portland because their injury report is DeAndre Ayton questionable, so we have to project him in. Matisse Thybulle questionable, so we have to project him in. We have no Time Lord, no Shaedon Sharpe, no Scoot Henderson, no Malcolm Brogdon. We also have Jeremy Grant doubtful. That, not exactly helpful for Portland. If Minnesota's offense was any better, this could be really ugly, but still, Portland, 14-point underdogs in Minnesota, 211 total. This is the Portland Trailblazers team with an implied total less than 100 gross. They're the number 29 ranked offense in the league. So one worse, the only one team is worse. They're taking on a Minnesota Timberwolves team that appears to be at full strength for today. And they're the number one team on the defensive side of the ball. And Minnesota doesn't exactly play fast either. Now, the problem lies in what's happening because of the dudes that are out for Portland. We have a pool of 19% Jabari Walker, and we're getting over that number a little bit. 21% exposure in our sim run to Jabari Walker. I'm guessing he's stepping right into the starting lineup in place of Jeremy Grant and going to play somewhere around 30 minutes. We gave him 28.5. We do have a little bit of negative leverage on the boom bust tool, but for right now, he's just a cost-efficient option at 4,700. He has that power forward center availability. I think you just have to pay attention to Jabari Walker, given who's out. We also have a little bit of ownership coming into DeAndre Ayton. He's 13% exposed for us in the Sims tool, just 9.5% owned. I got to 11% of Ayton in my own personal run, so I'm in agreement here, but we could just as easily see Ayton not play in this game. Then we're immediately trying to look at someone like Dwop Reith stepping into what would be the starting lineup and probably playing more minutes than you would expect, because now we have Jabari Walker earmarked to play a lot more at the 4, and they don't ever seem to want to play Moses Brown more minutes. It just never happens. So as I look at Portland, there aren't a ton of things that I really like. And only Jabari Walker got into double digits in ownership. If you want to play Anthony Simons, I think it's fine. I just don't think that at 8K, you're going to get enough value out of him, especially in a matchup where Minnesota can key into him. But just to show you guys what I'm getting here to start the day, I'm much higher on Jabari Walker. Now, like I said, I gave Jabari Walker a minute and a half more than our projections do on the site. That's causing me to get to a lot of Jabari Walker. And I think the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. He's showing up in 47% of my lineups right now. He's 18% owned. If I take 1 minute away, then I'm still a little bit higher than the site. And that'll probably bring my Jabari Walker down into the 30s. And I think being in that 2x area for Walker is about the extent of where I want to be, because we are creating value. The fact that we assume he's going to start today in place of Jeremy Grant is the appealing piece of this game to me, because he's not priced as if he's going to be a starter. If you knew Grant was going to be out for 2 weeks, Jabari Walker is going to be in the 5Ks once he's established that starter run. So this is just one of those spots to start off where we can squeeze a little value. Unfortunately, though, the rest of Minnesota, the rest of Portland, wildly unappealing. The Minnesota side, on the other hand, not all that interesting either. And you're going to see why everything doesn't look great once we get to Washington and Utah. For the Minnesota side, we have Rudy Gobert as the highest owned dude. He's projected for 11% ownership. We've got Anthony Edwards projected for 10% ownership. And then it's 5% or below for everybody else. Gobert and Edwards were also the only two guys that were north of 10% optimal in our boom bust tool. Edwards is also pulling a bit of love on the FanDuel side. He's 20% owned there. You can see in the Sims tool on the screen, we got Anthony Edwards in 15% of lineups. He's 11% owned. We got Gobert in 10%. He's 10% owned. And then just barely a little Conley and one random Jaden McDaniels lineup. I see it the same way. I only got to 14% of Anthony Edwards, slightly north of the field. He tends to be someone I get to a little bit more frequently. I don't hate that. He's great. 1.4 DraftKings points per minute for Anthony Edwards over the past 30 days. And he's going to meet very little resistance from the Portland Trailblazers. But after that, you can see it. 3% McDaniels, 2% Towns, 3% Conley, 3% Gobert. So I'm even a little lighter on Gobert. It's just not a spot I'm trying to get to in abundance. It's not as if Minnesota's implied total looks good. They're going to beat up on Portland defensively. But Minnesota only has a 113 implied total. That's going to be lower than Washington, Utah. It's going to be lower than Sacramento, OKC, the Lakers. So it's still just middle of the pack here for the Wolves. Now, if we want to take a look at any potential bets on the either Minnesota side or Portland side, not a lot at the top. I don't see Minnesota. I don't see Portland. The Blazers first half money line has a little bit of value on it. That's not one that I was expecting to see, but Portland Trailblazers first half money line, you can get it for plus 430. You could also grab it at plus 425 at Sugar House or Bet Rivers. Those are the only places that these plus 400s are existing. We've got the fair line at plus 390. So if you can find anything north of that plus 400 mark, probably more around the like plus 420 mark or higher, you might want to grab Blazers in the first half. That is coming in as a decent bet coming out of OddsShopper. If we look at it from the pick'em side, we see Mike Conley under 6.5 assists on Jock Market, coming in with a 3.5, close to 3.5% expected value. That would be the best play that we're seeing in this game right now. We've talked about 3 games so far. I think things are going well. Make sure you're hitting that like button if you've got the opportunity to do so, because now I have to talk at least a little bit to you guys about the sponsor of this show. And that is going to be BetMGM. You can see it on the screen right now if you want to. It's there. It's a graphic. It tells you that you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Now, this is very interesting to me because I'm new to sports betting. I'm going live on the 11th, but we are eligible for signups now in North Carolina. So if you're in North Carolina as well, you can join me if you want to. But what I see here, bet 5, get $150. It's that simple. When you sign up, clicking the link in the description of this video, your minimum deposit has to be $10. But you're going to get 3 $50 bonus bets. Worst case scenario, you lose your $5 bet to start and you drop all 3 of those bonus bets. Even if that happens, you're only out $5 of your own money. More likely scenario, let's say you go 2-1 on those bonus bets. You're starting off with a significantly bigger bankroll than you would have had before. And this is as low risk as it gets, only having to make that deposit for just make the deposit for $10. Make the first bet for just $5. Now, what we have to detail here is this. The legal age for gambling in most states is 21 or over. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. But if you have never signed up at BetMGM before, take advantage of this sign-up offer. Take advantage of the fact that we're popping into OddsShopper throughout this show, looking for different plays. You can take those plays right out of the gate, flip yourself into a bet, use your bonus bet, and hopefully walk away with a little bit of extra money. So that is what we've got going on today for BetMGM, sponsor of the show. You see it on the banner at the top of the screen. You see it next to me, that other handsome gentleman that's stuck on that screenshot. We love to see it, everybody. Now let's get back into the rest of this slate, and we are going to talk about the game that deserves the most conversation, I guess. Before I even touch on it, I'm going to let you guys know. If you're playing on DraftKings, there's 800% total ownership. When you add up all the numbers of ownership, you get to 800 because there's 8 guys in the lineup. 245% of that ownership is coming into Utah. Another 130 is coming into Washington. They're the only 2 teams over 100% aggregate ownership. They have 374% aggregate ownership. That means they are just shy of half of all of the ownership on today's slate. So this right here is what we need to talk about for today. The game that matters the most. The Washington Wizards, 6.5-point underdogs in Utah, 238 total. Now, for the Wizards, we just want to take a quick peek at their injury report. Everybody that's normally available it's Patrick Baldwin, RJ Hampton, Isaiah Livers. It's the Jazz portion that matters. No Walker Kessler, no Lauri Markkanen, and that is causing some of our major issues. Not to mention, neither team all that good defensively. Both play pretty fast. This is the spot that we need to be, and we'll start it off on the Wizards side. 6.5-point dogs, 238 total. Our current pool is showing, and I don't mean Jordan, but we'll get to him, 52% pool ownership coming into Kyle Kuzma, 37% to Tyus Jones, another 18 to Denny Avdia, 12 to Jordan Poole, 5 to Bagley, 5 to Bilal Coulibaly. And you can see what's happening out of the Sims tool. Not only are we playing the 50% owned Kyle Kuzma, we got to 69% of him in our first run. He's in 69% of the best 150 lineups that we were able to generate and use in our Sims tool. But we don't stop there. 63% exposure coming into Tyus Jones as well. That's two separate dudes from the Wiz in 60+% of our lineups. We have 30% optimal rate to Tyus Jones in our boom bust tool. 39% optimal rate coming into Kyle Kuzma in our boom bust tool. I am lighter on both of these guys in my own personal run. I got the 39% Kuzma, still somebody I want to take a stand on. He was my number one option today in my contenders video. And I only got the 16% of Tyus Jones to start. So it looks like I'm seeing this as a place where I can be lighter and maybe grab some other guys in their price tiers. And we'll see what that ends up looking like throughout the rest of the show. The only guy that I'm neutral on, very similarly, well, not even similarly, we are lighter on Denny Avdia in comparison to the pool. He's the one guy that I got to 17% of, dead neutral. I didn't get to Poole. I didn't really get to anybody else. And it really is just four guys. Because below Jordan Poole, the next highest owned guy is either Coulibaly or Bagley at 5%. But as we look at this in the Sims tool, we're seeing right away, Kyle Kuzma is a priority. Tyus Jones is a priority. And Jordan Poole and Denny Avdia are at the very least in most of your conversations for whether or not you should be playing them in a particular lineup. You don't have to have a ton, but they look good. And it makes sense. Utah, 25th in defensive rating on the season. They're without Walker Kessler, who unquestionably is better defensively than offensively. Markkanen is certainly solid defensively. They're going to get a lot of John Collins at the center spot. John Collins has been dreadful this season, so that should be helpful. We got to get to a lot of the Wizards. I think Kyle Kuzma is the best play on today's slate. You see that based on a couple things, but one, the fact that he is currently projected for the most ownership on the slate certainly matters. It's the Utah side of this game that is going to be a bit of a struggle. And it's the side that we've got some ambiguity in it too, because we know that Washington is 29th in defensive rating and second in pace. The Jazz are going to gain 3.5 possessions over their average in this spot. That's a lot of extra fantasy points just by the speed of the game. That doesn't even take into account the Wizards being bad defensively. So here we go. We're going to switch it over now to the Utah Jazz. Remember, this is the highest owned team on today's slate. And not only that, they're the highest owned team. They're double the Wizards. So I think the easiest way to start, before I touch on individual exposures, is to just simply tell you guys the expected ownership here. We have 8 guys on the Utah Jazz projected for double-digit ownership. It's 40% coming into Talen Horton-Tucker. He's 3,600 in shooting guard small forward. We have 35% coming into John Collins and Jordan Clarkson. We've got another 20. Well, we have another 30 to Keontae George. We have 20 to Omer Yurtseven and Bryce Sensabaugh. We've got 15 coming into Taylor Hendricks. Oh, did I miss Colin Sexton? I think I forgot to say Colin Sexton is also 40% owned. This game is nuts. Nuts. So let's look at it on the screen in the Sims tool. We have Talen Horton-Tucker in 43% of the pool. He is in 91% of our lineups. Now, I gave Talen Horton-Tucker 18 minutes. So did we. 18 minutes of Talen Horton-Tucker made him 39% optimal in our boom bust tool. I think THT looks great. You're seeing a guy with 43% ownership that also still has a positive player ROI. That's how good he looks today. Fantastic. The next guy up, we take a little bit of a drop down. Clarkson and Sexton are both essentially 40% owned, and they're in about 40% of our lineups. Now, I tend to have this one different personally, and I'll hop to mine just to show it. You'll see some of my other exposures as well. I got to 51% of Clarkson. I only got to 7% of Colin Sexton. He's an interesting case for me today. I didn't really see him getting the benefit you would expect him to get with no Lauri Markkanen in the lineup. I thought there would be a much bigger usage bump, and it doesn't appear to be happening. Now, I don't know if that's just me or not, but I only got to 7% Sexton. He is currently my biggest fade on the slate. I don't feel like I get him right a lot, and it's certainly a great matchup. I would prefer to look more like the Sims tool and have like 40% of Sexton than to not have him at all. But as of right now, if Locke were coming in here, Colin Sexton would be my biggest fade. Now we keep it moving. We go to the 35% owned John Collins. Our sim got him in 29% of lineups. I actually got him to 46%. Collins has a little bit of a usage rate bump when Lauri Markkanen is not in. And we also see him get a bit of a rebounding bump as well. I have John Collins projected for 1.2 DraftKings points per minute here against the Wizards. And it's not like he's worried about Marvin Bagley on the opposite side. So Sims tool is certainly still into getting to Collins. Omer Yurtseven's the tricky one. Now, the Sim tool got 20%. He's 21% owned. Our Sim tool is all, or our Boom Bust tool is saying that he's 13% optimal. Now, I only got to 1% here. He's 3,400. He's center only. All of that looks good. I gave him 14 minutes. We gave him 14 and a half minutes. He's the type of guy who should see his ownership come down if we get any additional value, because being center only and a value play, it's okay on some days, but we have Domantas Sabonis as a pay-up center today. We have Anthony Davis as a pay-up center today. We already talked about Rudy Gobert looking solid. We have other options that can pop up at center. I'm not, if Omer Yurtseven is the reason that I lose today, I'm more than okay with that. I don't see him as the guy that I like the most, because I don't like spending down at center like that. And for someone that is only really going to be the backup center for the game, you know, like it would take a John Collins injury to really matter. We're not done with Utah, though. Keontae George is in 27% of lineups, only 13% coming out of our sim. I got to 38. Now, the minutes have been up for George lately. We saw Keontae George in his last game play 43 minutes in regulation. Now, prior to that, it was 31, 30, 33, 31. He had 40 in a game before that. I'm happy thinking he's going to play like 32 minutes. And if he does, I'm happy to get to him. He has some pretty sizable negative ROI in our sim tool. We also gave him 33 minutes. So we're right where I am on Keontae George. He's going to be someone I dig into more, because seeing his negative simulated player ROI and seeing where I'm at right now, he might be a guy that I give an ROI boost in my personal sim, maybe down 5% or down 10%, and just soften the edges a little bit. We got to 10% Taylor Hendricks, 5% of Luka Samanic and Chris Dunn, and then just 1% of a 19% owned Bryce Sensabaugh. This is where I flipped the script. I got to 23% of Bryce Sensabaugh. I went to 19 minutes. So did we. He's a $3,200 small forward, power forward. Could see increased minutes. Maybe they go to him over THT. This is the part where we don't have a great feel. But if THT, who's a great per minute guy, by the way, whereas Bryce Sensabaugh a little bit less so. If THT isn't the guy that they want to go to for more minutes, and they do want to go to more Bryce Sensabaugh, I kind of think he looks interesting at less than half the ownership. of THT. But this is the type of game that as the day goes on, as we get more value in other places, and as just like information starts to stabilize, these guys will look different across the board. But the overwhelming summary of what's happening in this matchup is that you have to have this game. I have 340% of my 800% ownership in this spot, and I just don't see how you get away from it. It's two fast-paced teams, two bad defenses, guys missing on the Utah side, creating additional value. I don't know what else to do here. So just to sum up my personal exposures, 75% to THT, 50 to Clarkson, 45 to Collins, 40 to George, 25 to Sensabaugh, and 15 to Taylor Hendricks. We're rostering all of the Utah Jazz today, everybody. I hope that you're ready for it. But they are very clearly the number one team that you can get to today. Matchups against the Wizards are what you're normally looking for. As we look at Odds Shopper, do we see anything popping up for this game? We have Taylor Hendricks under 7.5 rebounds. That's sitting out there right now with a little bit of positive EV. Minus 109, under 7.5. You can get to it if you have availabilities for that line. There's not a lot of other places showing that sort of value for Taylor Hendricks. And that's sort of the extent of it. Maybe a little value you can squeeze out on Colin Sexton under 5.5 assists. That's sitting out there at plus 118. If you can find that number, grab it. On the Pick'em site side, John Collins under 10.5 rebounds. About as close as it's going to get on Prize Picks, but that's probably toeing the line a little bit. Just a little bit. Let's see. What else can we touch on that we haven't touched on yet? How about the fact that you can now get our all access data package? So we didn't have this package existing for a while. We do, though, now have a package that'll just be the data side. It does also include the lowest level of our Sims package, but that's basically just a bonus for you guys. It doesn't really have anything to do with like the specifics of the package. So I'm going to pull this up on the screen right now. Depending on what you're looking for, you can go to individual sport packages, whether that's going to be just the data package for the NBA, the data and Sims monthly package, the Sims Max package, which gives you every single piece of everything on the NBA side. But if you're really looking for something, and it's very easy, you can just go to stochastic.com. There's a Stochastic Plus label. You can just click on Stochastic All Access. This is our new data package. And this landing page has all of the information that you could be looking for. You can see all of the different sports that we're going to cover with this data package. But you can get, if you don't want to use our avatar, you can get our Stochastic Data All Access package for $300 a month. That link is going to be in the description of this video. If you go to stochastic.com/avatar, use our logo on DraftKings and FanDuel, on Owner's Box and Yahoo. If you use our avatar, you get a discount of $100. $199.95 to get the all access data package for a month if you're using our avatar. You can't ask for a better deal. Just to use our logo, you save $100. Don't sleep on it, guys. This package just got released. It is here for you guys now. You can see what you get. Projections, ownership, boom bust, our top whatever tool, depending on the sport. You get our Discord access, and you get the base level Sims access. If you're trying to use it, it'll at least let you test it out. But this package is now available, and those links are in the description of this video. 2 games to go. We don't have a ton to talk about for these games. Well, for some of the spots, at least. We do have a little bit to talk about on the Bulls side. The Chicago Bulls are 7-point underdogs in Sacramento. They are it's a 228 total. Now, for Chicago, we have a Q tag on Alex Caruso. His status will matter, but probably not a ton. I don't think we create too much, although we did see a couple other really junky 3K guys getting ownership, like Pat Bev, does that unlock a Bateem or something like that? Maybe. But right now, we've got 25% ownership coming into Andre Drummond, 20 to Ayo Dosunmu, 20 to Kobe White, 15 to Vooch, 10 to DeRozan, even a little bit coming into Caruso. You can see it in the Sims tool right now, too. 28% owned Andre Drummond showed up in 51% of our lineups. That might even look bigger than that if we get Caruso out and they go to more of Drummond and Vooch alongside of each other. I got to 47% of them using my projections. So I think the clear path here is get Andre Drummond. He's a 1.25 fantasy point per minute guy. He's 5,200. It's center only, which isn't ideal, but at his rates, playing north of 20 minutes, certainly something I'm interested in. We got 20% ownership of Dosunmu and Vooch right at the field marks. Now, I got to 19% of Vooch, so I'm right in line with the field. I got to 11% of Dosunmu, so a little bit more pessimistic on the Dosunmu side. Don't mind getting him, though. What I got to was Kobe White. Now, we're showing him with a bit more negative leverage. He was negative 19% sim ROI. We had him at negative 3% leverage in the boom bust tool, 15% optimal. Kobe White showed up in 32% of my lineups. I don't hate that at all against Sacramento. I liked the spot for sure. Gives me a little bit of a stand on someone that, while he is getting a little bit of ownership, it is one guy that I'm getting up and over the field on. But the negative player ROI will play a role in how I see him down the line. I might give him a little bit of a negative sim ROI boost and just see that come down a hair. Then we got a random lineup or two with Caruso. Similar story for DeRozan. I got to 9% DeRozan. As I look at Chicago, they look like a team that we have to pay attention to. If we happen to get Drummond into a starting lineup or no Caruso, now I don't know when we would get that news. It might be tough to really act on, but you're going to want to get to this one if you can get more minutes of Drummond. Reminder, this game is not on the FanDuel main slate, but I have it as Drummond and Kobe White as the two guys I want to get to the most out of this game. Nikola Vucevic not too far behind, but the Chicago side looks good. Sacramento is 20th in defensive rating. They're 11th in pace. Chicago plays really slow. This is a benefit to the Bulls. We also have the Sacramento Kings on the opposite side. They are still dealing with a questionable tag on De'Aaron Fox. And we're also dealing with a horrible game environment for Sacramento. 10% ownership coming into Fox, 10% to Sabonis. If we look at it from the Sims perspective, we're basically neutral on Fox and Sabonis. And then we just don't have other Kings. One share of Keegan Murray, one share of Malik Monk. None of that looks all that appealing to me. But in my stuff, I'm getting De'Aaron Fox. 30% at 8,500. This is a guy that's at 1.33 fantasy points per minute over the last 30 days. I like kind of getting to De'Aaron Fox, especially given this contest being a 100,000 person entry contest. A 10 o'clock game where we might have this Q tag hanging on until there's only 2 games left. I like the idea of getting to Fox as a way to get different in that contest, because if he's available, I like him against Chicago. That's just not a scary team. They play slow for sure, but I'll take my chances. And then for Sabonis, 10,500, I got him projected for 22, 13, and 8. He's a triple-double threat every time he steps on the floor, and he's certainly not meeting a lot of resistance from the Chicago side. It's certainly not going to be Vooch. So I like getting to Sabonis. I also like getting to Keegan Murray a little bit more than most people. I have 14% of him. He's 5% owned. Lovely GPP pivot in my eyes in this spot. But there's not much else that you could really prioritize here from the Sacramento Kings. It's single-digit optimal rates and single-digit ownership for everybody other than De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. Now, on Odd Shopper right now, Sacramento or Chicago, nothing really popping up at the top. It's Fox under 2.5 threes on PointsBet. That is the one that we have out there right now. Little bit of love to it. 3.7% expected value. You can grab that at PointsBet right now. That other, if it's not at PointsBet, there is no value on that line anywhere else. On the Pick'em side, we've got Kobe White under 32.5 PRA. Has a little bit of expected value on Prize Picks if you're interested in that. could be a good way to go, but it doesn't appear that we're squeezing a lot of value in the betting markets into Chicago or Sacramento, and really not a ton coming from the Sims tool either. So we're going to finish this one off now. OKC in Los Angeles taking on the Lakers. Thunder are on a back-to-back. We're going to take a look at the Thunder first. One last reminder, guys, if you can, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. There are plenty of links in the description of this video for you to sign up for a lineup generator and Sims tool. But make sure you're getting into BetMGM. You see that sponsorship on the top of the screen. Bet 5 to get 150. OKC in the Sims tool. Highest owned dude for Oklahoma City in the projected ownership is Jalen Williams at 8%. We got to 4 of him, 4% in the Sim tool. 2% of Shea. 1 share apiece of Dort, Chet, and Giddey. They just don't look good. They really don't. These prices are stable, and they don't ever deviate. Like, we know what their starting lineup is. Are the minutes down for Giddey? Yeah, they are. But that doesn't really benefit anybody else. Maybe we start seeing Muscala play like 10 to 12 minutes. But you get Aaron Wiggins and Kaysen Wallace, Gordon Hayward, Isaiah Joe, Kenrich Williams, Mike Muscala. All these guys play like 12 to 16 minutes. So there's just rarely anything worth talking about from the Thunder on a DFS side. And I see it the same way. I got to 3% Shea. I got to 3% Dort. 1 share of Chet. 1 share of Jalen Williams. 1 share of Giddey. It looks exactly like the Sims tool does. Just very unappealing across the board. So I don't really have much else to say here for the Thunder, because on the DFS side, their salaries are just where they're supposed to be. That coffee is hitting the spot. We close it out now. Final team for us to look at, the Los Angeles Lakers. Thank you guys for being here for this show. We're up to 500 concurrent. I love having you guys here. This is going to be the format of the strategy show moving forward. You're going to get me breaking it down solo edition. Hoping that Lofty and I can get onto an Odd Shopper show in the near future so he and I could provide our ridiculousness for it. But this is going to be my replacement for the process, trying to dig into this slate in a slightly different way than we've been doing for a while. If you guys have any thoughts at all of things you want to see on this show, we have a little bit more flexibility now. I am happy to dig into anything that I think will benefit the collective. So let me know in the description or in the comment section of this video or in chat, however you want to do it. Hit us up. If you have other things that you want to see, whether that's digging in more on the sports betting side, digging in less to the sports betting side, I want to hit everything. It's a giant package of what we got. So if you want more rotational talk, happy to dig in that way. I want to know what it is you guys want to see. What would you want to see more? What would you want to see differently if you want to? Los Angeles Lakers, you see it on the screen. 10% ownership to LeBron, we got 20. 15% ownership to AD, we got 15. 12% ownership to Austin Reeves, we got 12. And then just a little bit of Rui and Spencer Dinwiddie. Now, for me personally, I'm a little lighter here. Now, I'm completely in agreement on the AD piece. 10,100 at center. I'm right with the field at 15%. I'm right with the field on LeBron, whereas we had the pretty big stand. I also like the fact that LeBron has the slight positive sim player ROI. Might be something I dig into where I want to give LeBron a little bit of a bump. So I did get a little bit of D'Angelo Russell, a little bit of Austin Reeves. No major stands because it's a bad spot against OKC. The Thunder are 5th in defensive rating and 7th in pace. Maybe Anthony Davis saw what Yusuf Nurkic did last night and thought to himself, you know what? I'm going to have 30 rebounds today. Maybe that's a direction you want to go. But I see the Lakers as just, I'd like to get to their 2 main guys. I'm happy to get a couple extra shares, but no overwhelming priorities coming in for the Lakers either. So that's sort of where we stand on the Lakers. I'll hit on some of these things. Rob H hit me with the super chat. I'll put that up on the screen quickly. He said updates on coaches post-game and pre-game tea leaves for rotations, maybe. Certainly something that we could look into more, pull in a little bit of additional detail from any word. I usually rely on S&P to drop those tidbits into chat for me, but absolutely something that we can look at a little bit more. More sim tutorials. Now, that's not going to be something that I can totally do on this show because getting the information out is going to be a little bit more important. But that is something that we can touch on. We can do little things using the Sims tool as we're doing the show and see what the impact is. It won't necessarily be a tutorial, but we can be a little bit more granular on the Sims as well. Now, the last thing that I want to do here, since we've already worked our way through, I'm just going to pull off the filter so that we can see every team. We'll take one look at the bets for OKC and the Lakers. We got Shea under 6.5 assists, plus 110. Has a 7 odd shopper rating, around 5% expected value. You can get under 6.5 plus 110 at Bet365 if you're interested right now. And then not much else on the top here. If we look at it from the Pick'em side, SGA has the free square on Sleeper. Don't forget about that. Hop on over to Sleeper if you play there. That's just going to help you maintain your costs. Not much else that I see at the top. We can look at what the number one lineup was coming out of the Sims tool. And I don't have a natural way to make this look easy. At least I don't think I do. Austin Reeves, Colin Sexton, THT, Kuzma, Day'Ron Sharp, Jordan Clarkson, LeBron James, and Andre Drummond. That was the number one ROI lineup via the Sim tool to start off our day. That would be our number one lineup coming out of this first run of the Sims tool. The other thing that I wanted to touch on before we get out of here is not the projection screen that's coming up right now. I'm going to run the lineup generator. We have all of these tools for everybody. Why not take a look at the NBA lineup generator as well? So I'll look at it for DraftKings. I'm just going to use all lineups. You guys can see how easy it is to use the lineup generator. This is the easiest thing to sign up for at Stokastic. It's the deal to me. I'm going to pull up the pricing just so you see it, because this is the cheapest way to get in. And I think it's going to help the most people. Again, this landing page will show you everything you want to know about the lineup generator. But you can get into the NBA lineup generator for $14.95 a week. This is the way that I think anybody, if you're trying to get behind the paywall, or if you want to know anything about Stokastic, lineup generator is going to be the place that you should start. I just pick a couple options here. I'm not going to lock any players in. I'm just going to say skip. Immediately, we have a lineup on the screen. It's very close to the optimal. Super duper duper chalky right here. So we're at the top of the list for optimal. Very chalky. Tyus Jones, Pat Bev, Clarkson, Kuzma, Claxton, Fox, Collins, Drummond. And you can see on the screen, this is perfectly set up for you guys to use on a mobile device. Now, let's just say that lineup's too chalky for me. I don't want it. I'm going to click discard. Now, that one's pretty chalky too. I'm going to click discard. Still chalky. A little bit less chalky. We're working our way up. It's hard to be extra contrarian on a day like today. So that sort of jump to contrarian, that's where I start to look at it a little bit different. And you can see why it's happening. 3.5% owned Luka Samanic popping in right here. That's the way to get a little bit more contrarian. Let's say we save that one. And now I'm just going to let it rip. I'm going to save every lineup that shows up so that we can look at a package of 20. We can look at these saved lineups. We have exposures here on the side. THT in 70%. Kuzma in 60%. Tyus Jones in 50%. You have this list of lineups. You can clear them all if you want, or you can just immediately click this button and export them to CSV. It's that simple. It's that easy. You can click get more. You can go back and start from scratch. Really work on it. Swap players around. This is the tool for you. Those links exist in the description as well. Guys, I think we are done here. This has been a fantastic opener to the new strategy show. I'm happy to see everybody here. It's been fun. You see the schedule on the screen right over there. 6 games tonight, only 4 on FanDuel. Any questions or concerns you have, drop them in the comments of this video. But for now, I'm going to get on out of here, folks. Strategy show in the books. Catch me on the deeper dive later today. Prize Picks video and contenders already out for ages. You don't want to miss it. You can even get that on our podcast feed too. Subscribe to the podcast feed and get all of our long form content via podcast. Either way, folks, this was fun. I'll talk to you later.